And this is where we bring in our guest, who's an author, a content producer who grew up in Ibadan, where her love for stories began among books, films, and old music. She's carved a path in Nollywood. She's worked on hit TV shows, documentaries, and even Nigeria's first feature-length animation. Not content with telling stories on screen, she turned to writing, bringing Lagos to life with her debut novel, A Very Giddy Christmas, followed by A Nollywood Christmas. So her work blends romance, humor, and everyday Nigerian life, capturing the heartbeats, the dreams, and the struggles of contemporary Nigerians. Tomilola Adeyemo, welcome to Jasiri. Very unassuming.
Yeah, I was just going to say all this in this beautiful package, okay. When it says small pepper.
I tell you. Tomi, welcome to Jasiri.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here.
You're wonderful women. I've watched your works individually.
Oh.
I've been watching, I started watching you when I was a teenager in Ibadan.
You're kidding me.
Catherine,
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much. It's so nice to be in the company of beautiful,
you're very welcome.
brilliant women.
Oh my God, we'll talk about your earrings and we're done.
All right, now, Tomilola, when you look at Nigeria now, honestly, would you actually classify us as a reading nation?
I really don't think so. I don't think that we have stopped reading. Especially because you're not trying to limit reading to something. For like a lot of people, when they talk about books, they're just talking about, literary fiction. But, just recently, I think a few days ago, Open Country Mag and Roving Heights is Nigeria's largest chain of bookstores. And they have this 100 best-selling list that they publish every year. I think this is maybe the third or fourth year, I'm not sure. And that list came out a few days ago for 2025. And you can see the diverse texts that people actually read. The best-selling book last year was Femi Otedola's book,
yes,
and then the next one was Dream Count. And I think that the third one was a romance book by a romance novelist, actually, as well. So you see diverse books, you see critically acclaimed books, you see commercial fiction, and all of that. So I don't think that people have necessarily stopped reading. If you ask it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think that has stopped. However, I do think, which is what probably led to the conversation that erupted on social media some days ago, I do think that reading certain things, maybe classics or books, affordability, accessibility, all of that over the years have impacted the reading culture around here. And then, I was watching part of the show earlier while I was in the lounge, and I saw you guys talking about like how young people are more drawn towards
making content
now. Yeah, so there's social media and all of that is fighting with
reading.
like
anyway,
all that,
thank you, Tomilola. As young Nigerians, are they reading less or they're just reading differently?
I think I think it's reading differently, actually. I think they're more diverse. So, for instance, right, the genre I write in my two books that are out, it's in romance.
Aww.
And I write, so far, I've only written Christmas books. And the first year, the first one came out as a debut author. I'd written indie ebooks and all that. And the book was my first, and he went on number 60-something on 100 best-selling lists. And this last list, the first one leapt to number 12.
Wow.
So
I haven't read it.
Would rectify that. So people are actually, which is why I said it's more diverse, it's more different. People are picking different types of books to read. But of course, we still have to acknowledge the fact that there are more distractions now. And with the thou which shall not be named AI, people are, perhaps maybe a bit lazy because now you have people don't use AI as an aid in most cases. They use it as the primary way of doing the work.
True.
And then in that case, instead of I'm a millennial, so I grew up in the era where you still had to do the work. So you weren't delegating it. And even at that, we still had the internet. I remember doing my project in 2010 and asking my mom, who had finished, she had finished NC in 1989. And I was asking her was asking in Yoruba, like, Mommy, how did you
do research?
Because I was just online. I Googled, I was doing, I majored in playwriting. So I was online Googling like this German author that had been dead long before maybe even my mom was born or something. Yeah. And I could do it on Google. And I was like, how did my mom?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was asking her then, now look at what has happened over time. That's 16 years ago. Yeah. People send emails now just using AI. Yeah. And you can see errors in it. You can see how some of these things just don't make sense. So, yeah, I think there are now distractions, perhaps more than it was before, and that's impacting on reading.
Okay, so what really does reading culture even mean in the light of everything that's happening, distractions? What does it even mean? Looking at from 2005 to 2006, we established that people are reading differently now. And I was going to ask you when we were talking, what's the percentage? What do people read more now? I miss when I read. I miss the smell of books. I like print. It comforts me. I want to sleep with the book. But I'm an old soul. But now people are reading differently. There's long forms. There's ebooks. So where is the highest concentration of reading? In what form is this?
I mean, I think that I would have to be in publishing to be able to give you that statistic, like to be, very, very clear and whatever with that. But I do think that people might be reading a bit electronically more than they used to, because books cost a fortune. As I am here like this, my own books, I couldn't buy, I can't vex and say, as I'm coming here today now, I had to buy my own books for the three of you, because it's a lot of money. Books are 13K, 15 on an average. Books cost 15K now.
Well, it's a good gift, isn't that?
I mean, absolutely.
It would be a good gift for.
It is. But with everything, the economy is impacting cost of publishing, things like that.
Quality, now before, paperbacks for me, it was like something give you a paperback. You think they really love you, or the hardcover. Oh no, I mean the hardcover.
Yeah, the hard.
Then the paperbacks, that okay, I can just manage. But hardcovers were classics that you just want to keep in your library.
Yeah.
But now the cost of
it's ridiculous.
I wrote a book like 2 years ago. I can't even lie. I've not even printed one physical copy like this. Because when they gave me the printing copy, I was like, okay, how do I sell it?
Now imagine doing all of that and someone just puts the PDF of your book somewhere.
You talked about people reading more electronically, and before you came in, Catherine was asking us when was the last time we read, and I told her, that I read a lot online, but the last time I opened a book was like 2 weeks ago, and then she was like,
"No, you said you opened it.
God bless you.
And you shut it."
my goodness!
But she opened it
and closed this right back.
But I still said it. I still said I opened it. I opened it, Shah. Did you open it 2 weeks ago? But then, the idea is, I told her that I read a lot online. She was like, no, that doesn't count. So I want to know, are we actually confusing content consumption with reading? Because, we scroll constantly. We're always online. We're reading this, the news. Everything is online, right now. But are we deeply engaging in reading?
I mean, so honestly, truly, I think that we are. I think it's just maybe plummeted. It's not maybe what he used to be. For instance, even I was a writer in all areas of my life, by the way. I'm a screenwriter in Nollywood. I'm a writer, fiction, and sometimes I can say, okay, today, now I want to write my next manuscript, my next book. And I'm online, I'm like, let me just see what's happening on Instagram. Jesus. And then I just keep scrolling. And, I really like the term doom scrolling, because it's true. You're just doomed to just keep going. And the way the algorithm is also this
doing everything to keep you there.
It's doing everything to keep you there. And every other platform is trying, because on Twitter initially, or X as they call it these days, initially you could just watch a video and get out. Now the moment one is finishing like this, it's just another one is, and then it's just going up. Before you know, you can spend an hour, you can spend hours.
I think you can change that with the settings.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yes, you can.
See, this is why I like conversations like this. I didn't realize that. Can you do that on Instagram as well?
Yeah, you can.
And everywhere, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere.
For my Instagram, I'd have to scroll before I see the next one. It doesn't automatically scroll.
Wow.
So I think it has to do with the settings.
Yeah, but there's still something that pushes your
you keep going.
Social media is designed to keep you there.
Keep you there.
Like, I mean, talking about settings, actually, when you want to post a story on your Insta story, for instance, on Instagram, and you step out, say maybe you're like, oh, I've posted this thing, let me go do something else. In some cases, if you don't reset that setting, it insists for you to be there for that story to finish uploading.
Yeah.
So it asks you, like, do you want to? Yeah, so everything is designed to keep you in there. So yes, I mean, I don't know if that directly like answers like your question, but I think like content consumption in that way is a direct way.
Well, I also want to ask, because I've heard a lot of people say reading on electronically and reading a book is not the same thing, even if it's the same content. Well, is that true?
I think it's the same thing. No, but I prefer books.
It's not exactly.
I could never ask like.
I prefer books, so I think it's a personal decision and choice, yeah, because I personally do both, but I prefer paperbacks. I prefer to read ad covers, paperbacks, and all of that. That's what I prefer. So a lot of people, especially like, you know, like of certain generations, prefer that. So, and I always say, like, for us millennials, we're like that intersection in between, you know, as we're growing older, as blogging, social media, everything was coming to play and all that. So for some of us, we have a different preference, understanding for some of these things. So I definitely prefer paperbacks.
I do too.
But yeah, I also do read electronic.
So I love paperbacks. Yeah. Not saying anybody can tell me. But now, a few days ago, a Google Drive containing over 200 classic African novels was shared online. It sparked debate across the country. Some saw it as a gift to readers, others saw it as theft from the very writers who built this legacy. This tension lies at the heart of what we're talking about today. How do we honor our writers and also make African literature accessible to the people who love it? This is a part of the conversation we'll get into after the break. Stay with us.
Now, a few days ago, a Google Drive containing over 200 classic African books was shared online. Some called it a gift to readers, others called it theft. But beneath the outrage is a deeper truth. Books in Nigeria are expensive. Printing costs are high, distribution is difficult, the naira is strained. So this is not a simple villain and hero story. It's complicated. Our guest today is Tomilola Koko, author, screenwriter, and content producer. Tomilola, I can only, imagine the discussion about this situation, in your writers' groups. Now, when you first heard about the Google Drive with over 200, African novels and all that, what ran through your mind?
I was like, oh my God, here we go again. What's funny? It was Molara Wood, who is a renowned, writer, journalist, who had called everyone's attention to it, like, initially. So I think someone had shared. I mean, I never saw the post or the tweet or whatever. And, she talked about it like, oh, this is wrong and all that. So I had gone to quote her like, oh, the last time I and another author I talked about something like this, we were called elitists and privileged. And, people came, oh my God, they're calling me foolish, that you are blinded by your privilege and all that. So obviously, when I first heard that, I thought, and I think the conversation, as you said, was deeper than that. It's not like in black and white. Yes, there are lack of access to books. Increasingly, in fact, it's actually sad how the average person does not have access to books. And, we all know what we say, when you read, what your mind becomes and all of that. So that's actually affecting people's access to knowledge. Like what to ingest and all that. So we want to have a conversation about like electronic whatever, about books and all of that. But people don't even get these books to read. And some of these classics are some of the things that we read maybe while we're in secondary school or, at the university, and people don't have access to that anymore. But I think what the conversation then became was how some people seemed to want to normalize piracy. So like, okay, so how else are we supposed to get these books? Yeah. So, and then, the conversation then becomes, the fact that there is no access, or that we need to have the very important, that's the most important conversation in the room, how the governments can step in and make these books accessible, make them, maybe cheaper, I don't know, open up the libraries, put some money in there. We all know how education has become really bad. So it became that in itself, really. But to be able to have that conversation, you have to be able to acknowledge that piracy in itself, in its entirety, it's bad, it's theft.
I'm wondering that if somebody is releasing somebody's books, whose works are they? Do they have rights to release it? Because there is no other name to call it but piracy. Yeah. Because if it is not their works, that means you have put somebody's work in public domain where they ought not to be. Yeah. So, with all this era of knowledge, are these sites not traceable, you know, to be able to have a culprit? Because if you don't hold somebody accountable, now, I can't lie to you, there is no classic Hollywood film that there are some sites that you won't find them. And if this is happening to books now, it's as if we're taking profitability away from those that put their heads to these works.
Yeah, I mean, like, there were conversations about that because that fight really got nasty and messy at some point.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because people started saying stuff like, I mean, as an author, if you stepped out and said, oh, I don't want my book to get pirated, people would just come and start, you know, saying really nasty things, really mean, disrespectful things to you. And authors don't make a lot of money from the sales of books. Like, in the general context.
Yeah.
Now, there's some outliers, obviously. You know, like in every culture, there are people who, you know, they put stuff out and boom,
and
you know,
gold,
like, there's like a lot of money and all that. But like, that's not necessarily the reality of the average writer, right? So, and things are getting, you know, with the economy, things are getting worse because even if they gave you $10K 10 years ago, that's not the same thing as collecting $10K now. No. So like everywhere in the world, you know, the economic hardships, we're dealing with quite a lot, you know. And so as an author, it then begs the question, so when I do all of this, and this is my primary source of income, so what then happens to me, you know?
Because it takes me to my next question. Honestly, it's just moving on what the foundation you've just laid. Books are expensive, what do we do? And then, so you ask yourself the question, how do you balance empathy for readers, and then, of course, respect for the writer's work?
I mean, so I know that this probably sounds like everything is the government's fault, but like maybe, perhaps, the government has to step in. I did see a tweet, I think it was from maybe one of my either contemporaries, some of my, you know, ogas in the business, talking about the state of public libraries across the country, right? So we've made reading luxury. It's ridiculous. So when it gets to a point where people feel like they have to go out of their way to do this, of course, like, we're all humans. Someone was trying to balance this and equating it to like food and all that. Like, when people get so hungry, they're like, oh, I have a right to go and steal somewhere. It's still a crime, right? But like, on the other hand, like, you look at it and you're like, man, this hunger has gotten to the point where this person feels the need to go carry something that is not theirs. So I think, like, yes, there has to be conversations, but those things also have to be backed up with actions, right? So yes, it's not good to do this. You have to have empathy and all of that, but you have to back it up. And then, like, with authors, of course, there's a conversation about, oh, your advance royalty payments. What is that going to look like?
Oh, yes.
Because, you know, like, in that sense, if you see some of the average whatever, I mean, I'm signed to a publisher who tries their best. Absolutely. They'll pay your royalty on time, you know, they'll pay you what you're due and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's still like in the book part, you get your advance royalty. If somebody gives you 10 million naira as advance royalty, which I can assure you that that's not what people are getting. But if somebody gives you 10 million, it means that it's like music. Now it does mean you have to sell books that are over 10 million before you start making money from those books. So like, and then there's also like the printing cost that comes in. Is a publisher then going to publish books that are going to make 10 million naira in that period for you to be able to start making your money back? And then everywhere in the West, we hear authors there complain as well. So this is not a situation peculiar to Nigeria. But in the Nigerian space, it does seem like, yes, we need some, like, let the government step in, make books accessible, and also like sensitize people, let people understand that, you know, this is a thing that is wrong, you don't do this, and humanize, you know, like the whole thing. While I was growing up, there were like more libraries.
I remember
we used to actually go to libraries to
yes. Now, they rather go to lounges.
So I'm asking, you see, so it's a travesty, really, and it's a battle. Imagine for some, being in that creative space, you always have to be in a place where you're creative. So what makes you then put out work? What makes you write? What makes you, when you know that there's no money inside?
And your landlady is asking you for rent and service charge and all of that. It's actually like, it's not a good time for creatives. It's not.
And a lot of people will say that because we're in the creative industry, people just think because you're the ones that write the colors. I love movies. I love when I see work. We were sharing just before you came how I'm Yoruba, but I've always had the affinity for the Igbo culture.
I thought you were Igbo for the longest time.
Do you know that? I mean, a lot of people,
and then Lola also.
I would. Madame Flora Nwakpa was one of the people that gave me the impetus to step into the culture. When I read Efuru, it just felt as if I was thrown back in time. I would put a cloth over myself and imagine a kid as I'm going to the market. You know,
the
and
power of good writing,
drew me
the
in.
power of good
but it
writing.
seems that in this generation now, I think Nigeria, do you think that Nigerians really understand what copyright means? You know, because we have been talking about it in films, piracy, we just
perhaps they don't
talk it.
Yeah.
But do they know the cost?
I don't think
what it does to authors or filmmakers.
So. Yeah.
How can we make them understand? Yeah. Because when somebody writes, they do not know that it's a fruit of your mind. That means it's an intangible. It is whatever price you put on it. That is. Yeah. I can't tell you what the cost of your book would be. It's your work from your brain.
Yeah.
Unlike somebody that designed this call. How can we make Nigerians know that this thing they're doing is hurting the writers, the authors of books? You don't seem to have respect for that. Maybe if you guys come out in tattered clothes and say, I cannot eat.
So do they even understand like, what it means in the first place?
So I don't actually think we could, like, there's going to be a world where piracy or, you know, infringing on copyrights would not exist. In my utopia, that would not be a thing, but I don't think it's actually going to be, because as you were talking, I'm in Nollywood as well, and right now, Nollywood's primary platform for distributing is YouTube. And people will still go on that same YouTube to your own channel, carry your film from that YouTube, and put it on their own channel on that same YouTube, with your poster, like with the audacity to put your poster on it. On that same YouTube. So like it's for a lot of people, which is why for me when people start to say sometimes it's about, you know, affordability, I don't think so. I think some people are just thieves. Yes. And like they just, I don't know, maybe enjoy doing it. I don't know. So perhaps yes, there should be penalties.
But even the platforms themselves, they should be able to block it.
I mean, of course, YouTube tries. YouTube does try. It just it might take
but
a while,
some people
but they
still
do
circumvent the systems.
Yeah.
I agree when you say some people are thieves, because we see that happening in music a lot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Especially with the invention of AI.
Yeah. Exactly.
So now let's go back to the Google Drive folder, you know, that was said to contain a vast collection of African literature, specifically from Heineman's series. So that brings back memories. All right. No, but we've stated the fact that many classic African books are out of print and almost impossible to find. So who should be responsible for making some of these books accessible?
So the world of publishing, as I'm coming to realize, it's actually like Yoruba people call it Oja Okunkun. So it's, I don't know how to
Oja Okunkun, it's just like
in English.
Everybody comes in there blindly.
Yes, yeah.
You just don't know what's going on there.
Because, you know, you think you have a hang on of it, and then maybe perhaps you do not. So there's a, I don't want to say it's like a disconnect, but there's perhaps like a gap, you know, with, you know, when you publish and then you print and all of that. And publishing is not, as with every industry where, you know, there's paperwork, there's contractual obligations and all that, you know, stuff in fine print, it's not straightforward. For instance, right now, I'm a published author, and the rights to my books, if I got like an international publisher today, my Nigerian publisher is going to be on ground, because, you know, the contracts that I have signed, you know, puts them in that, you know, someone sent me an email yesterday night, for instance, wanting to publish ebooks of my book, because, you know, they're not available in ebook format yet. And I had to say to them that I would really like to explore this. Unfortunately, I already signed, or fortunately, I mean, I don't mean, before my publisher says, what do you mean, unfortunately? But I already signed that contract to say these guys are the ones who have the rights to actually do this. So with those books, we don't know where the contractual obligations are at this point. We don't know what is being said. We don't know, so because some of those books are, you know, there's also the copyright law that after some years, the book is now in public domain. Anyone can go and do whatever and everything. So the lines gets blurry from there. So I don't know with, I mean, I was looking that up, Heineman, and when I was looking at the writer's series, and it was for like decades, many decades. And so, some of those publishers have changed name because they've been acquired by one other person.
True.
So like there's a lot of, it's not that straightforward. And some writers are not published in Africa. They're published in America. And to have those books be here is a distribution conversation. It's not that your book is out in America as a Nigerian author does not mean it's automatically out in Nigeria. So I think we need to first understand that it's not necessarily in black and white. It's not that straightforward. So perhaps that's what is affecting you know, the availability of some of those books here. But in a case where you have people like like the classics, where you have like the Shoinkas, the Wapas, Achebes. Yeah, I was trying to remember. Yeah, sorry. And you have those people who are like, I mean, those are icons. Those ones are no longer, you know, So there has to be a way to make those books, you know, accessible in public domain and all that. And then it all then goes back to the structure we have here, the state of education.
Still talking about this. Like, Kathy, just before we go on a break, just quickly, just, you know, add to it?
No, I think we should just quickly go on a break because I would like to ask, but I wanted to use, Dash, you interrupted my thought. I wanted to use like, you know, I wanted to use like, we're no longer at ease and things will fall apart if we don't go on a break. So let's go.
Welcome. We're discussing books today. Many young Nigerians want to write. They have stories. They have a voice, but they also have rent to pay. Tomilola Coco has published 2 novels. She understands the excitement of holding your book and the anxiety of selling it. Yeah, but to be honest, you know, is publishing in Nigeria, is it financially sustainable? Or do most writers survive on hope and side hustles, or I should just rephrase and say vibes and inshallah? Tomilola, we had some questions before we went on that break. Maybe Catherine wants to ask us before I ask.
Yeah, I know. I was going to ask, so who's responsible? Who's failing here? Is it the markets? Is it the government? Is it the publishers? And then as a writer, how do you feel when a lot of people want your story? They want to read your story. They want to read African stories, authentic African stories, but they can't get their hands on them.
And that's always like something I think almost, because I watched a Chimamanda interview where she was talking about how she was always so happy every time it was that a copy of her book was published at home. You know, she has a Nigerian publisher, which is sort of like what I was talking about earlier, you know, like, you know, the contracts and everything and all that. So I don't know about like the failure of the system?
Yeah, like the failure of, because when we spoke about the challenges, that it's a stretch. Your works are not recognized. You're fighting piracy. We are fighting. So who is the contributory? Who is that contributory link? What is the base of this? Who's failing? I know we spoke about government being the umbrella.
Yeah, I hate to sound like this woman just came to complain about the government today. But it's the government. Because, so here it is. I mean, when you say government, it might make it sound distant, like something that is not human, you know. But the truth is, it's affects our daily lives and how we are able to just work. As creatives, like, you need a level of comfort. And by that, I don't mean that you're making all the money in the world and all that. I'm saying there's lights. You want to type, you have charged to your laptop. You know, you can link the internet. Sometimes, like, internet is so expensive, the average person can't do that. I'm writing a lot of times and I'm like, what does this even mean? Let me just do a quick check. And then I go online and then I Google that and I quickly see. So imagine in a case where you cannot afford internet, or then maybe as you are typing, you know, they just carry lights. And then you're like, and maybe perhaps you haven't made, because, you know, creatives, and when they're coming up and now they're struggling, you haven't made enough money to say, let me go and afford my generator. Do you even have generator? Can you even afford a generator now? When I was starting out in my career, like a little over a decade ago, things were a bit easier and cheaper than they are now. And like, I remember moving into like my current apartment and all the things that I could afford at the time with the 130,000 naira. I can't afford one of those things with that amount now. So like, imagine people who are younger creatives who are coming up. Imagine what they have to deal with. And then there are deadlines, there are things you have to do. Don't be person who don't chop where they get inspiration.
And they tell you.
Why is your inspiration? It's just...
It now translates, in fact, it translates into Lola's question of...
Because I was going to ask you that, how are you surviving? Because if it's just about you being an author stricto sensu, you don't do any other thing, this is the only job you have. And I mean, let's not even say you are writing for Nollywood. You are a book author. You write feature, you write only fiction. How are you going to survive?
I ran away from this part of the business for a long time because of that. So, because immediately I left uni, I was like, nope, I'm not trying to do. Me and my friends at the time would call it these Iroko bamboo writers, you know. So we're like, no, we're not trying to be that. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be paid for my stuff, and at the time it looked bleak. So I just went to Nollywood, where you know you would write a script and they'll pay you for it. And at the time, you know, like Africa Magic Mnet had like a very good structure. I think that still exists, where you could grow, you could see your career growing. So you could come in as an entry-level writer, you could become a staff writer at some point, and they would, you know, they would pay you decently, and it was good. You could start a life with that. So like that's why I ran away from here. But over time, you know, like by the time I came back here and all of that, you know, things seemed pretty okay. As I said, I'm also blessed to be with a publisher who tries to be as fair as they can be. So I mean, as long as your books are doing some decent numbers. But the way it currently is, you know, this climb that we are in, I can assure you, I don't think anyone can primarily do just writing books for a living. I don't think that's
so how about those that sell in buses? How to be a billionaire? Are they authors?
So, now you've talked about challenges. You've talked about, you know, who's responsible. Now let's talk solutions before we wrap up. What do you think it will take to, you know, make book culture aspirational again?
So questions like this, I always feel like I don't know how to answer them, because I feel like there isn't one way to it, and that to acknowledge and to begin to answer that question, to begin to answer the question, you have to acknowledge that reading isn't one-dimensional. True. And that you don't say that, oh, you're reading this genre, so it does not count as reading, which you hear like quite a lot. So in my own case, obviously because I'm a creative through and through, I didn't come from any other industry. I've always been here. This is what I studied. And I was blessed to also come up and be inspired and influenced and motivated by, you know, my guys in the business who are people who also came from that space. So like it was easy to come into it and be able to do all this. And eventually, even with that, my mentor would still say to me, you have to learn and read the classics and the greats and every critically acclaimed thing that exists before you then go and become a romance writer. Let it be that I chose to start writing romance, but I already know the rules that apply and I'm already good at this. So like, I think we first have to acknowledge that reading isn't one-dimensional and it's not one thing, and that you read some other things does not make you less of a reader. Some of the things that I've read that are like stories that moved me the most were flash fiction from the New Yorker, where I would go there and, you know, at that time, I don't know, Nigerian cards were working. I don't know if they're back to working, they stopped working. And I'll quickly read through somebody's whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then I would go away from there. So once we move past that, I think then we can then come about, you know, accessibility to books. I think that the reading culture is lost in schools. It starts from childhood. All of us here will probably be able to relate to reading storybooks from. So, and maybe some of those books were not necessarily
Ralia, Sugar Girl.
The Drummer Boy, Cyprian Quincy's books. So like, so we were able to, so we have to get back to that, and that's currently a problem. You know, you can't see that. My mom is a principal in a government secondary school in Ibadan, and I tell you, they struggle, you know, through most of these things. Some of this,
I agree with especially with all the distractions.
There's a distraction. Some of this, I heard some of the things that some of the kids in schools, there's a serious level of violence. Kids are in cults. Oh yes. Oh yes. They wait for it. They have issues from home. They come to school. They leave. They beat each other. Like I hear horror stories. So like it's really terrible. You have to fix that before you now start talking about.
That's a conversation for another day. But for today, Tomilola Adeyemo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For being such a graceful guest and being such a well of knowledge that we could share from today. And that's our conversation for today. But the conversation was about stories, access, and the people who give us both, the writers and the readers. It wasn't just about piracy today. It wasn't just about publishing also. It was about value. What do we value enough to protect? Because books are not just paper. They are memory, they are identity, they are resistance. On this World Book Day, may we not just consume stories, may we protect the people who write them. And to everyone watching, buy a book, buy her book, borrow one, gift one, read one. Whatever you do, don't let the culture disappear. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. West African time. Bye. Tomi.